This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Today is a very sad day. It's reputed that the Chassam Sofer already began crying Erev Tisha B'Av to such a great extent that he was able to fill up the entire cup with tears, and he would dip his bread in it. L'kayim ashenemar lechem b'dmois achalti. Well, the Mishnah tells us at the end of Masechta Tainis that 5 tragedies happened on Tisha B'Av. The Mishnah begins on Chavav Amud Aleph, and the Mishnah on Chavav Amud Beis explains to us what the 5 tragedies were. B'Tisha B'Av nigzar al abeisenu. On Tisha B'Av it was decreed on our forefathers shelo yikansu la'aretz, that they should not enter Eretz Yisrael. V'charav habayis barishayna. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed the first time. Uveshniya, and the second time. V'nilkada Beitar. Beitar was captured, V'nechresha ha'ir, and the city was plowed. And throughout history, Tisha B'Av has always been a lightning rod of Jewish tragedy. Many tragedies occur on Tisha B'Av. Alexandria, Shel Mitzrayim, which was even larger than Beitar, was decimated on Tisha B'Av. The Jewish community of England, was expelled in the year 1295. The Abarbanel and Hoshea says the remez is Kala Garesh Yigaresh Kala is Gematria 1295, is the year 1295. And the community of France was expelled on Tisha B'Av, and of course the Spanish expulsion was on Tisha B'Av. World War I broke out on Tisha B'Av. V'chahina, I even remember when I was a kid, it was a week before my bar mitzvah. I grew up in Flatbush. We davened in the Aguda of Avenue L. It was Shabbos morning, Tisha B'Av. So it was a year that Tisha B'Av came out on Shabbos. My bar mitzvah was the next Shabbos in the shul Parshas V'aschanan. And I'm walking to shul, and I look at where the shul was, about a block away, and it wasn't there anymore. It had burnt down Leil Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av has always been a very tragic day. In fact, the Navi Yirmiyah, who was born on Tisha B'Av, cursed the day of his birth. We're going to focus on one particular tragedy that we don't know so much about, and that is, the Mishnah says, V'nechresha ha'ir. The city was plowed. What exactly is the tragedy that the city was plowed? So the Gemara says, a few blot later, on Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Kishacharav, Turnus Rufus Harasha Sahechal, when Turnus Rufus destroyed the Heichal. So the question is, there's one problem here. He didn't destroy the Heichal. Titus Harasha destroyed the Heichal. But Turnus Rufus didn't destroy the Heichal. So the Masaras Hashas says on the spot, Kishacharash, Kach Tzarach Leimar, when he plowed the Heichal. When he plowed the Heichal. Why did he plow the Heichal? That is question number 1. Why would he plow the Heichal? The Brisker Rav, the Griz, quoted in the Sefer Yibane Hamikdash, asks, Lama Charash Turnus Rufus es Heichal. Why did he plow the Heichal? I mean, if you would ask me, he really did us a big favor. Because if you have a building and it's destroyed, you can't use the old foundation and rebuild upon it. If you want to build a new building, you got to gut it and build a new foundation. So the truth is, he really did us a big favor. Instead of us having to pay a contractor to bring in a demolition team and destroy the foundation, he did the job for us. He saved us a few bucks. We should give a big yasher koyach to Turnus Rufus. So number 1, why'd he do it? Number 2, what's the big tragedy that he plowed the city, or that he plowed the Heichal? And in fact, David HaMelech in Tehillim seems to say that the biggest tragedy of all the tragedies, and in fact, maybe you could even point out, it's the ultimate tragedy mentioned in the Mishnah in Tainis. Worse than the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash and Beitar is Nechresha ha'ir. That's like the pinnacle of tragedy. What was so tragic about Nechresha ha'ir? But David HaMelech says, Zechar Hashem livnei Edom. Remember God, the descendants of Edom. Eis Yom Yerushalayim, the day of Yerushalayim. Ha'oim erim aharu aru. You know the song? I guess not. Ha'imrim aru aru. They say, destroy, destroy. Ad ha'yisahoid baha. They say, destroy until the foundation. Meaning David HaMelech is saying, God, David HaMelech doesn't even mention, remember that they destroyed the temple. No, David doesn't mention that. Remember that they said, destroy, destroy even the foundation. What was the big tragedy? That the Romans destroyed the foundation, that Turnus Rufus was machriv, was aru, that he uprooted the foundations of the Beis Hamikdash. The Ramah in Siman Taf Kuf Nun Hey, Sif Beis, the Ramah brings down a minhag. Says the Ramah, V'yesh b'nei Adam mesimim even tachas merashoseim. Some people place a stone under their heads. That the night of Tisha B'Av, some people, there's a concept of being mamayet in one's pleasure, that some people put a stone under their head, Zeichar lama shenemar, in memory of that which it says, Vayikach me'avnei hamakoim, that Yaakov Avinu took from the stones of the place, Shera hachorban, he saw the chorban. So Yaakov Avinu had a dream, and in the dream he saw a sulam, V'hinei malachei Elokim, oilim v'yardim bai. Says the Ramah, not only did he see a ladder, he saw the chorban, and during that dream that he saw the chorban, he took me'avnei hamakoim vayikach vayasem rashoisav. And in order to commemorate that, some people take stones and they put it under their head. The question is, mehechi tesi, how does the Ramah know that Yaakov Avinu saw the chorban? It doesn't say that in the Chumash. It says in the Chumash he saw the chorban. It says in the Chumash he saw malachim going up and down. Elevator going up, going down, going up, going down. Is there any reference, is there any hint, is there any intimation that Yaakov Avinu saw anything related to Chorban Beis Hamikdash? What does the Ramah mean? Mar Rabbi Glatstein. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Etain bamidbar erez. Look at number 10. I will set in the desert cedar wood. Shita. Shita I think means acacia wood. Vahadas, myrtle. Ve'etz shamen, pine trees. Asim ba'arava, I will make in the desert. Beroish, cypress, tidhar, fir, usa'ashur, box, yachtav, all together. In other words, I'm not quite sure what all these things are. I could tell you what they mean in English, but I can't tell you what the English words mean. I'm not exactly sure what a fir. I guess some kind of I got, yeah. But type of tree. What a box tree is, I'm not sure. But these are various types of trees. Apparently, Rabbi Glatstein is saying a prophecy that the desert will bloom, right? The desert will become fertile. Now, you read this pasuk and you say, hey, there's something, something a little familiar about this pasuk. I heard that before. I heard Hadash, Shita, Beroish, Tidhar. That sounds somewhat familiar. And it is. It's familiar. It's from one of the Zmiros of Shabbos, from Derar Yikra. Derar Yikra Leve. Okay, well, let's skip to the relevant part. Elohim Tain. That's why the Shiurim get such high ratings, Okay, so Elohim Tain Ba'midbar Har, God, Tain, give, Ba'midbar, in the desert, Har, a mountain. Hadas, myrtle, Shita, acacia, Beroish, cypress, Tidhar, fir, V'la Mazhir, V'la Nizhar, those who warn others, those who are careful, Shloimim Tain, give peace, Kimei Nahar, like the river. Okay, so Dunush ibn Labrat, when he was sitting in Spain, he wasn't, thinking, let me think of some nice words to sing on Shabbat. He didn't make up these words. These are words from the Navi Yeshaya. The Navi Yeshaya uses these exact words. Shita, Hadas, Beroish, Tidhar. He clearly took it from the Navi Yeshaya. The question is, what's the first bakasha? Elokim, Ribbono Shel Olam, Tain, Bamidbar, Har. Make in the desert, Har, a mountain. But where'd he get that one from? The Navi Yeshaya don't say nothing about mountains. It's all about the fertility of the Midbar. Where did Dunush ibn Labrat, the Mechaber of this Zemer, where did he get this idea that Rabbi Glatstein was going to make a mountain in the desert? Marav Rabbi Glatstein, we come across an incredible thing. And that is that the Har HaBayis even though we call it a har, we call it a mountain, it wasn't always a mountain. How's that? Remember, Avram Avinu, the pasuk says, "Vayar es hamakom merachok." He saw the place from a distance. What do you mean he saw the makom? It's not a makom. It should say "Vayar es hahar merachok." After all, Avraham says, "Asher yeyomar hayom bahar Hashem yeroeh." In fact, the Gemara says Avram Avinu called it har, Yitzchak called it sadeh, Yaakov called it Beis. So why in the beginning is it called a makom? What do you mean a makom? It should say Vayar sahar meirachok. Says the Yalkut Shimoni. Look at number 7. Mitchila haya hamakom amoik. First the place was deep. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbeinu Shalom said, wait a second. It's not derech kavod for a king to reside in an amoik, in a makom amoik. I need a nice tall place. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ein derech hamelech lishkoin ba'emek. Ela b'makom ma'ula, only in a special place. Gavoya v'yafeh v'higbiyah HaKadosh Baruch Hu lekach nikra har hamoyriya shemiyurasai. Out of the fear of God, nasahar, it became a mountain. In other words, Har HaMoriah was not always a mountain. It evolved. How did it evolve? Rebbe Shem said, and he skewered the earth to conglomerate, to consolidate, and it turned into a mountain. Originally, it was nothing. It didn't even exist. It was an amoik. It was an amek. It was a valley. And Hashem was go'ar by, and the land came together and it gathered to become a mountain. Says the Medrash Tanchuma, v'hechnira meirachaik. What do you mean he saw the place from far? You can't see a place. If it's just flat land, you can't see it. Says the Medrash Tanchuma, melamed shemetchila haya makom amoik. In the beginning, it was a deep place. Kivan Shamar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lishvar Shechinasai Allah V'lasais Mikdash. Once God decided to become a Mikdash, Amar, he said, Ein derech melech lishkoin be'emek, el b'makom gavaya, me'ula, meyupa, v'nira lakol. So Hashem gathered all the surrounding area, and he gathered it to consolidate, to become the Makam HaShechina. That's why it's called Har HaMoriah. Shemi Yerasai Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yizbarach Nasa Har. Out of fear of God, it turned into a mountain. Look carefully at the lashon of the Medrash. The Medrash says that the place was very deep, and Hashem said, "I don't hang out in deep places. That's not where I hang out. I need a good place to live." So therefore, it turned into a mountain. What do we see from here? That in order for the Shechina to dwell on the Har HaBayis, it has to be a Har. If it's only a Makom, if it's only an Amoik, the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't go there. In fact, the Tosefta says, La'asid Lavai, listen carefully, look in the Tosefta, Masechta Brachos, Parak Aleph, Ois Tezayin, Ein Shechina Chayzeres Ad Sheteyasa Har. The Shechina will not return to the Har HaBayis until it turns into a mountain. Shenemar hatoiv hazeh v'halavanoin. This week's Parsha. Hahar hatoiv hazeh v'halavanoin. Vayhi b'shalem sukai. Matzinu kishishalem kruya har. Shenemar vayikra Avraham shem hamakom Hashem yireh. Fine. So Chazal are saying that the Shechina will not return until it turns into a mountain. So you say, what do you mean? It is a mountain. What do you mean the Shechina won't return until it's a mountain? It is a mountain. So the Tosefta mysteriously quotes the pasuk, Zechayr Hashem levnei Edoim me'emasai mishenekru yisoidaiseha. From when did the Goyim destroy the temple? When they uprooted the foundation. Mimena ha'imrim Aru ad hayisoidba. Says the Brisker Rav that if you look in the Rambam, we'll see in a moment that the reason why Turnus Rufus plowed the Heichal is l'kayema shenemar and Yirmiyah tzion sadet heicharesh. Says the Brisker Rav. Why did Turnus Rufus plow the Makam Hamikdash? Why did he plow Yerushalayim? Because Turnus Rufus understood that the entire concept of Har HaMoriah being a Makam Shechina was only because Miyurasoi Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbeinu Shalom scared the surrounding areas and it consolidated and turned into a mountain. And only then the Rebbeinu Shalom rested his Shechina. So Turnus Rufus says, Titus, you did a good job, but you did absolutely nothing. So you destroyed a makam of Eitzim v'Avanim, so what? The Mikdash is still a makam hashra shchina. So Turnus Rufus says, you got to do one more thing. If you uproot and you plow over the Makam HaMikdash, it's not considered a har anymore. If it's not a har anymore, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, adios, see you another time. I'm out of here. What Turnus Rufus was trying to do was he was trying to revert the Makam HaMikdash back into being the Makam before Miyarasai Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it became a har. Therefore, the Navi Yeshaya says, yes, etain ba'midbar erez, I will place cedar in the desert. But says Dunash ibn Labrat, there's one more thing that we need the Rebbeinu Shalom to do. Based on the Tosefta, Tosefta says the Shechina will not return until it turns into a mountain. Says the Brisker Rav, why did Dunash ibn Labrat stick into Durar Yikra? Elohai kimtein ba'midbar har. What do you mean by, what are we asking Moshe to do? Make a mountain? What do you mean make a mountain? It is a mountain. The answer is, it was a mountain. But it is not a mountain presently. The Goyim plowed it over. There were oiker ad ha-yisoid ba. Memela, what we are hoping for is not only the restoration of the Mikdash, because the Beis HaMikdash would come down from Shamayim, it would not do the job. If we would wake up in the morning and we would see the Beis HaMikdash coming down in Shamayim and that's all, we would still be in hot water. You know why? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom would not come to the Mikdash. Because there's something missing. That once Turnus Rufus uprooted the Makam HaMikdash, it's not a har. And the first thing we need the Rebbeinu Shalom to do is Elokim Tain Ba'midbar Har. Once he's Elokim Tain Ba'midbar Har, then we're ready. Bring the house down. Then we're ready for the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Brisker Rav, it's quoted in Reb Shlomo Brevda Sefer, Yibane HaMikdash. He quotes the Yalkut. Parshas Vayera, Vayaras HaMakam Eirachaik. In the beginning, it was a Makam. By the way, how do we know in the beginning it was a Makam? The Magen Avram is Medayek, V'lech lecha el, V'lech lecha el. No? Achar adorim hoile v'ha'alokim nisa es Avraham. Okay. V'lech lecha el
Eretz HaMoriah.
Eretz HaMoriah. Remember that? Remember something called the Torah? V'lech lecha el Eretz HaMoriah. What do you mean Eretz HaMoriah? What happened to Har HaMoriah? It wasn't. There was no Har. The Magen Avram in the Zayis Ranon, he says the diuk of Chazal is V'lech lecha el Eretz HaMoriah. Once Avram goes there, Rebbeinu Shalom says, I'm not hanging out over here. I'm not going to be shoichein ba'emek. Now, if you look in the Tosefta says, Minayin she'en shchina choizeres ad sheteyas ahar shenemar hahar hatayv hazev halavanoin. Says the Brisker Rav, Rav Brevda quotes the Griz, that he asks on the Tosefta, what do you mean until it becomes a mountain? Haloi gam izman hazeh la'achar l'churban, it's still called a har. So what do you mean? Ad sheteyas ahar. The answer is, the Mishnah tells us at the end of Tainis that the fifth tragedy that happened on Tisha B'Av is Nechra Shaha'ir. The Rambam says Turnus Rufus uprooted the city to Mekayim Tzion Sada Techaresh. Therefore, says the Griz, Mikivan Shekfar Hechrivu Haramim Es Habayis V'Sarfo Es HaHeichal. Why in the world did Turnus Rufus uproot and was Charash the Heichal? Says the Griz, since it's mashma from the Tosefta, that a t'nai for the Rebbeinu Shalom to return to the Beis HaMikdash is that it becomes a har. And Turnus Rufus understood that the soul of the Jewish people is not the bricks and it's not the stones, it's the Shechina. In order to ensure that the Shechina would never return, Turnus Rufus was oiker, was macharish, the Makam HaMikdash. He was charash as hamakam, and restored the har back to a makam. And therefore the Tosefta says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yachzar v'yagbia es hamakam v'yasa har, so that the Shechina could return. By the way, the Brisker Rav pointed out, that's why in the Haftarah of Shabbos Nachamu, we say, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yoimar Elokeichem. By the way, what's the gematria of Nachamu? 104. So twice Nachamu is 208. Gematria Pinchas Eliyahu. Nachamu is 208. That's with Eliyahu Hanavi. Kol Gei Yinaseh, every valley will be lifted up. That's the big nechama. Can you imagine? After thousands of years of tragedy, Hashem says, good news, Brooklyn is below sea level, we're lifting it up. Meichel Taivas. That's the big nechama. We're going to lift up the low places. The answer is no. What Rebbe Shalom is referring to Kol Gei Yinaseh, refers to the Mountain of Hamikdash. That the first step of the return of the Shekhinah is what started out as a Mountain and turned into a Har and reverted back to a Mountain. La'ased lava Kol Gei Yinaseh, all the low-lying areas will be lifted up. Says the Brisker Rav. That's the pshat. The Navi Yeshaya says, Etein ba'midbar erez shita b'hadas v'ed shamen. The only thing it doesn't say there is Eloi kimtein ba'midbar har. So where did Dunish ibn Lebrad get it? What's the makar? You don't just write a zemer. What do you mean? Ribbon shall make a mountain. For what? That's the big song on Shabbos, make a mountain? Says the Brisker Rav, the makar of the zemer is from the Tosefta, that the return of the Shekhinah will not happen until the Mountain of Hamikdash turns into a har, and therefore it is our fervent desire and prayer, Eloi kimtein b'midbar har. And we could understand and we could feel that really the biggest tragedy of all the tragedies, it's not the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, it's the lack of Shekhinah in Klal Yisrael. Even today, what are we missing? Yerushalayim is such a beautiful city. Now you have parks and gardens. You see Binyan Yerushalayim. So what are we missing? Rabbi Yashiv, when he would daven Shemona Esrei, he wasn't marach. He davened at a pace. The Iker Kavana that he was madgish during Shemona Esrei, I heard from somebody who sat next to him, was he would pause by the words, Baruch Atah Hashem, Hamachazir Shechinasai L'tzion. That's what we're hoping for, the return of the Shekhinah. And the return of the Shekhinah is predicated on the Eloi Kimtein B'midbar Har, that the Rebbeinu Shem reverts the Makom Hamikdash from a Makom into a Har. Marv Rabbeisa, we had a question. Many people have a minhag, they put a stone under their pillows the night of Tisha B'Av in commemoration of the dream of Yaakov Avinu, who he saw the Churban. What do you mean he saw the Churban? The pasuk says he saw a ladder with malachim going up and down the ladder. Where in the psukim do we have any indication that he saw the Churban? Says Rav Nosson Adler, the Rebbe of the Chassam Sofer, Chassid Shebekahuna, he says the Davar Oyam V'Noira. You know how Chazal know that Yaakov Avinu saw the Churban? Because we're already after the time of Avram Avinu. And Avram Avinu was Mispalel, Asher Yeyomer Hayoim Bahar Hashem Yeroya. So could someone please tell me why the pasuk says, Vayifka B'Makoim? What do you mean by Yifka B'Makoim? It's not a Makoim anymore. It's a Har. So what do you mean by Yifka B'Makoim? It must be B'Nevuah, he saw that this place, which is now a Har, will one day again turn back into a Makoim. Vayishkav B'Makoim. What do you mean by Makoim? It's not a Makoim. Vayishkav B'Harahu. Elamai, says Rav Nosson Adler, from here Chazal derive that Yaakov Avinu must have been seeing the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And the remez is as follows. So that's one remez, the word Makoim. That's why the Torah uses the word Makoim in reference to the encounter of Yaakov Avinu. Otherwise, you'd say Vayifka B'Harahu. Vayifka B'Makoim, meaning he's encountering Churban. Chazal say Shaka Chama Shaloi Ba'inasai, right? Vayifka B'Makoim Vayolen Sham Kiva Hashamesh. He slept there because the sun set, and Chazal say the sun set early. We know the Geula is likened to the sun. Like the Gemara says in Nedarim Adav Ches, La'ased lavai yoitzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu chama min artika. So if the coming of the Geula is the rising of the sun, then the Churban must be the setting of the sun. And if the sun set early, that must be a remez to what? The Galus happening early. And what does Rashi tell us in this week's Parsha? Parsha's V'aschanan. We're going to learn it tomorrow. Ki soilid banim uvnei banim v'noishantem ba'aretz. You're going to grow old in Eretz Yisrael. And Chazal say that Rebbeinu Shem said that if you are in Eretz Yisrael 850 years, then I'm going to have to be Mekayim v'ibadatem mehira. I'm going to destroy you quickly. So therefore the Rebbeinu Shem did us a favor. You know what the favor was? He kicked us out 2 years early, after 850 years, so that we shouldn't be there 852 years, so that he wouldn't have to destroy us. By the way, we were in Eretz Yisrael, how long? 850 years. What's the cheshbon? Before the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we were there for 40. Before the first Beis Hamikdash was built, we were there 440 years. And the first Beis Hamikdash stood, how long? 410. After 850 years, call it a day. By the way, the Chumash Hadeshin asks, it's not fair. We were gypped out of a year. We could have hung around one more year. And the Rebbeinu Shem could have let us go after 851 and then say, okay, you're not V'nai Shantem, leave now. Is a raya brura from Rashi that when it comes to gematria, you're allowed to be one off. And if we would have been there, by the way, the Trumas Hadesh and Arishon says this is the makar that by gematria could be one off. Because if you had to be exact, then the Rebbeinu Shem should have kept us there one more year. Why did he have to kick us out after 850? Keep us 851 and then call it a day. Must be 851 is already 852. So, amazingly, that's the pshat. Vayifka b'makom. Yaakov sees it as a makom. What do you mean he sees it as a makom? It's a har. He's seeing churban. Vayishkav b'makom hahu. That's the pshat that when Yaakov Avinu got to the Har HaBayis, the sun set early, meaning he's witnessing, that's a remez, to the early coming of the Galus. The Galus came 2 years earlier than it needed to come. Look at number 13. Vayifka b'makom, Amar Chazal, Sharas HaChorban. He saw the Chorban. He says, look in the Hagoyis Mordechai. And in the Ramah, that some people put a stone under their pillow to Mekayim vayikach me'avnei hamakoim. And they darshan this, says Rav Nosson Adler, the Rebbe L'chsam Sofer. From where do Chazal know that Yaakov Avinu saw the Chorban? Shenemar manoira. What did Yaakov Avinu say? Manoira hamakoim hazeh. Manoira hamakoim hazeh. V'darshu kain. Al shamakoim beis hamikdash hayimikoidem rak eretz mishar. At first it was just a place. V'nikra makoim. Kama shenemar vayaras hamakoim erachik. V'avram Avinu bikesh asher ye'omar olav hayoim b'har Hashem yeirah v'naseh har. It turned into a mountain. But by the Chorban, it reverted back to being a makoim. How do we know? Aru ad hayi soidba. And therefore Chazal say, if it's vayifka b'makom, he saw the Chorban. And this is what it means, shakaloi chama shaloi ba'inasa, that Hashem did a chesed to Klal Yisrael, that he was makdim the Chorban 2 years earlier than V'nai Shantem, after 850 years, instead of 852, so that we wouldn't be there forever. In one of the kinnis, we say it as follows: Sar shemumo vayikoinen ein zeh. Vayikoinen ein zeh. He was mekoinen ein zeh. Who said the words ein zeh? Yaakov Avinu, right? What did he say? Manoira hamakom ahu. Ein zeh kiyim beis Elokim v'zeh shar hashamayim. Could someone tell me that's a kinna? Ein zeh is a kinna? He's saying, Ein zeh kiyim beis Elokim. This is the house of God. What's the kinna here? It sounds like a shira to me. Ein zeh kiyim beis Elokim. How is that a kinna? So again, this is going to explain how Chazal know that Yaakov Avinu is seeing Churban Beis Hamikdash. We have a Kabbalah Beis Hamikdash Shalmala Mechuvan Keneged Beis Hamikdash Shalmala Shenamar Yushalayim Habenuya Ki'ir Shechubra La Yachdav. Yushalayim is like the city that is attached to it. Question is that there are no cities attached to Yushalayim. Yushalayim does not have any sister cities. It's Yushalayim Harim Savivla. So what city is attached to Yushalayim? Says the Gemara in Turnus that Beis Hamikdash Shalmala Mechuvan Keneged Beis Hamikdash Shalmata, that the Yushalayim Shalmala is attached to Yushalayim Shalmata. And we have a tradition that the Beis Hamikdash will never be destroyed so long as the Beis Hamikdash Shalmala is directly attached to it and corresponding to it. In order for the Beis Hamikdash to be destroyed, we'll read in Eicha tonight, Nier Hashem Mikdashai. God shook His temple, meaning He took the Beis Hamikdash Shalmala and He moved it. He moved it, then Beis Hamikdash Shalmala is here. Beis Hamikdash Shalmata is here. Now the Beis Hamikdash Shalmata is vulnerable. But so long as the Beis Hamikdash Shalmata is firmly rooted in Beis Hamikdash Shalmala, it's impenetrable. That's why it says, Nier Hashem Mikdashai. God shook His Mikdash. So Yaakov Avinu, we know, as he's coming from Beersheba to Beisel. So what does Rashi say? Beisel's in the north, and Beersheba is in the south. And he's going to Luz. And what happened? The Makom Hamikdash jumped toward him. Beis Hamikdash jumped toward him. That means the Beis Hamikdash Shalmata is out of place. So it's no longer Mechuvan, Keneged, Beis Hamikdash Shalmala. Beis Hamikdash Shalmala is here. Beis Hamikdash Shalmata is here. So Yaakov Avinu says, Ein zeh ki im Beis Elokim. Right now, this is only Beis Hamikdash Shalmala. Beis Hamikdash Shalmata is out of place. From there, Chazal derive that he must have seen Chorban. Because if he sees the two are not aligned with each other, then that creates an opportunity for Chorban. So, Vayikoinein, you know what the kinah is? Ein zeh. It's only Beis Elokim. It's only Shara Shamayim. But it's not Beis Hamikdash Shalmata. From here we derive that Yaakov Avinu saw Chorban. So two Mekaimos. Number one, he sees Beis Hamikdash Shalmala not mechuvan keneged Beis Hamikdash Shalmata. Another inyan, listen carefully. Vayishkav b'makom hahu. He slept in that place. What does Rashi say? B'makom hahu shachav. Aval b'yud daled shana shahaya b'beis ever lo shachav b'layla. Why? Shahaya oisek b'Torah. So I have a simple question for you. That means for 14 years, he learned uninterruptedly. He didn't waste his time. He didn't check his phone. He didn't twiddle his thumbs. Yaakov Avinu learned Yoimam V'Layla. So could somebody please tell me, so why is he not learning this night? You know why? Because now he's seeing Chorban. Not only is he seeing Chorban, it is Tisha B'Av. He has the dream, says Achsam Sofer, on Tisha B'Av. He has the dream on Tisha B'Av. He's not allowed to learn. Because you have a kasha. You know, the Torah doesn't say one word that Yaakov Avinu was a big masmid that he actually learned. What does the Torah say? Oh, we got him. He didn't learn. You know what? That's how you talk about a Yaakov Avinu. Imagine you have a kid. He's a tremendous masmid. He's learning day and night. And after 14 years, he looks out the window. Oh, I got you. You're not learning. Can we have some positive reinforcement over here? Why can't we have a night? Why are we being so critical of Yaakov Avinu? Oh, he didn't learn. No, we're being mishabeach him. It's Tisha B'Av. He's not allowed to learn. He's saying that he's not allowed to learn. It's Tisha B'Av. Now, by the way, just as an aside, we spoke out on Friday. There's a very interesting machlokes between Rabbi Vadi Yosef and Rabbi Ben Zion Abba Shaul. We know we're not allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av. But there are Dvarim HaMutarim. You'll either learn Kamsa Bar Kamsa, you'll either learn Eicha, you'll either learn Dvarim Haram in Yirmiyah, Eiv. Some people say you'll either learn Musar. So I have a question. Once there are things you're allowed to learn, do we now say you're mechuyev to learn those things because you have a mitzvah of Talmud Torah, of a Higisa Bayom V'Layla? Is it only there's things you're not allowed to learn? These things you're allowed to learn. Once you're allowed to learn them, you're mechuyev to learn them? Or is it that there's no mitzvah of learning on Tisha B'Av? it happens to be these things you're allowed to learn. But you're not mechuyev to learn. If I want, I could lie down. If I want, I could learn. I'm not mechuyev to spend my whole day learning kamsa bar kamsa. I learned it 3 years ago. I know it already. Now this year, I'm just going to sit and stare into space. Is it, once it's a reshus, does it become a chiyuv? Or is it just a reshus? So Rabbi Tzion Abba Shaul says, from the Mata Yehuda and the Shevet Yehuda and the Kaf HaChaim and the Erech HaShulchan, once there are things you're allowed to learn, you're mechuyev to learn them. The nafkamina is, let's say, in your shul, there's a nice Holocaust video. But I'm able to learn. So why watching videos if you could learn? There's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Or do we say, no, I'm not, it's the one day a year that I'm free. I'm not mechuyev to learn. If I want, I can. I'm not obligated to. I could do whatever I want. So Rabbi Tzion Abba Shaul says, it remains discretionary. Rav Avad Yosef says, once you're allowed to, you're mechuyev to. L'chayra, from this Chasam Sofer, you have a raya that it's discretionary. Because if you're going to say that once you're allowed to learn certain things, you're mechuyev to, so why wasn't Yaakov Avinu learning Leil Tisha B'Av? Why wasn't he learning then? Elamai, you're going to say, what is it? He should have been learning Kamsa Bar Kamsa, Eicha, Yirmiyah, and so on and so forth. Elamai, it's just a rishus. Okay, just a thought. Okay, so let's just add one more step, Rabbi Isai. Let's talk about the evolution of the Har HaBayis. We know, according to the Medrash, the Har HaBayis started out as a eretz, as a makom. Vayaris hamakom erachik. And Avram Avinu davened it should turn into a har, and it turned into a har. And when Yaakov Avinu saw the Churban, he saw Vayifkas hamakom. And it remained a har until the Romans came and they said, Ha'oimerim aru aru. They destroyed the foundation, and until this day it remains a makom, and we're all mispala, and we all hope to see the day that Eloikim tain b'midbar har. But here's the question: why did the Rebbeinu Shalom make it a makom? Why didn't he make it a har? If he didn't, if a time came that he didn't want it to be a har, then Turnus Rufus could always come along and be oikerit as he did. Why did it start off as a makom, turn into a har, go back into a makom, and one day we hope it turns... Start as a har to begin with, and you don't need Avram Avinu to be mispalo that it turns into a har. So on this nakuda, you have arba neviim misnavim b'signoin echad. You have 4 gedolei achronim. They all say the exact same thing. Rav Nosson Adler, and the Chasam Sofer, and Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, and the Rebbe Reb Heschel. Rav Nosson Adler in the Sefer Torah's Emes, the Chasam Sofer in a number of tshuvas in Siman Reish Ches, in Arachayim, in Yordea, Siman Reish Lamed Gimel, Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz in the Tiferes Yonasan, and the Rebbe Reb Heschel in the Chanukas HaTorah. They say as follows. There's a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah. Amar Rabbi Akiva, look at number 15. Ani oivin va'adon lefanecha, I will prove. Kal makom sha'ata moitzei, har gavaya, wherever you see a high place, v'giva nasa, and a lofty mountain, v'etz ra'anan, and a leafy tree, da sheyeh sham avodas kochavim. You should know there is avodah zarah there. Any mountain in Eretz Yisrael, you should know it's a makom of avodah zarah. Here's the problem. Im Kain, then how do you build a Beis Hamikdash on the Har HaBayis? But if the Har HaBayis is a mountain, if it's a mountain, it's a Makam Avodah Zarah. Now listen to this. If I have a cup, let's not talk about me. My friend has a cup, and he worships the cup. He bows down to the cup. He prays to the cup. And then he wants to sell me the cup. I can't be nene from it. It's ne'avad. It's served as a avodah zarah. It's gone. It's kaput. What if my friend has real estate, and he worships his real estate, and then he sells it to me? Can I build a house on it? Yes, because there's no ne'avad b'mechuber l'karka. However, if my friend has real estate, and then I want to be makdish it, if he serves his real estate, I can't be makdish it, because nevad is asur for hektish, even b'mechuber l'karka. So the question is, how do we have a har habayis there's a very, very big problem over here. If we have a cloud, and Rabbi Kiva says that every mountain and high place in Eretz Yisrael is a Makom Avodah Zarah, how is the Har HaBayis viable? So Tosfos on the spot quotes the Yushalmi, who asks, look at number 16, Parach mi Beis HaBechira. How is the Beis HaMikdash a Makom of Hashras HaShechina? How could we use it as a holy place? But it's nevad. According to Rabbi Kiva, every high place is considered a Makom Avodah Zarah. And the Yushalmi answers, Al Pi Navi Nivneh Sham. It was built through a prophet. Which makes how much sense? None. What do you mean? What do you mean it is built from a prophet? Yeah, but the prophet also has to follow the law. And the law is that if something is served as Avodah Zarah, even b'mechubar l'karka, it's a problem for hektish. So what does Tosfos mean that the Yushalmi answers Al Pi Navi Nivneh Sham? Comes Rav Nosson Adler and he says a davar ayam v'naira. When Avram Avinu came to the Har HaBayis, it wasn't a mountain. It was a makom. It was an emek. Goyim don't serve valleys. They don't serve makaimis. They only serve a har. And therefore, it started off as a valley. Avram Avinu comes and is mispalel, and the Rebbeinu Shalom frightens the area, and it turns into a mountain. Who then is the first person to lay stakes to the Har HaBayis? Avraham. Avram Avinu says Rabbi Nissan Eibeshitz, Asher Yeomer Hayoim Bahar Hashem Yeroyah. From today on it will be called a mountain. Yesterday it was Eretz HaMoriah. Yesterday it was Hamakim. Now it's Har. So Avram Avinu lays stakes to the Har HaBayis. Now what's the halach if I own real estate and Yenim comes along and worships my real estate and I want to be makdish the real estate to the Beis HaMikdash? Can I? Yes. You know why? Because Ein Adam Oisar Davar She'eino Shaloi. You can't come and worship my thing and now I'm up the creek without a paddle. If Har HaBayis was always a har, and Avram Avinu would have come late in the game in the 9th inning. Then we say, Avram Avinu, very nice, you're doing Avodah on Har HaMoriah, but it's long ago, a Makom Avodah Zarah. But before Avram Avinu came along, it was an Eretz, it was a Makom. The first time it was a har was in times of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu said, Asher Yeomer Hayom Bahar Hashem Yeroyah. Once Avram Avinu lays stakes to the Har HaBayis, then the Goyim, even though they came and they served Avodah Zarah, they cannot effectuate a chulin on the Har HaBayis because it was already in the possession of Avraham Avinu. But here's the thing. How are we going to find a mountain? In other words, when David HaMelech was searching for a place to build the Makam Hamikdash, what kind of place does he need? He has a tremendous dilemma. He needs a har, because Hashem doesn't rest on an emek. But if he has a har, it's a makom avodah zarah. So he needs a makom. But if it's a makom, it's not bakavadik. So what does he need? A makom that turned into a har. So David HaMelech wasn't around back in the day when there were makomos that could have turned into a har. So he needs someone to tell him, hey David, this is a makom that turned into a har. So David HaMelech says in Tehillim, I think it's in Parak Pei Gimel, says David HaMelech, he says, Ad emtza makoim lashem, until I find a makoim for Hashem, but it needs to be a makoim that's mishkanois la'avir Yaakov, that's right to be a place for Hashras HaShechina. So who's going to go ahead and tell David HaMelech, this used to be a makoim, and now it's a har? That's why Tosfos says, that the Yushalmi says, it was Al Pi the Navi. The Navi said, don't worry, David, it used to be a makom, and now it's a har. So the evolution of the Har HaBayis, it's an incredible thing. It started off as a makom. It started off as an emek. Why? So that it should not become a makom avodah zarah. The first time it became a har was by Har HaMoriah, by the Akedah. And Avram Avinu was mispalel Asher Yeomer Hayoim Bahar Hashem Yeroyah. It turned into a har. But from the moment it turned into a har, it's in the possession of Klal Yisrael. And we're always the owners. That's where it is?
Yeah.
It's in Kapitel Kuf Lamed Beis. Ad emtza makom laHashem, mishkanos la'avir Yaakov. David HaMelech says, Im avoy ba'oyel beisi, im ela al eretz yitzuai, that I'm not going to enter my house until I build ad im etein shnas einav abayit tnuma. I'm not going to give slumber to my eyes. Ad emtza makom laHashem, mishkanos la'avir Yaakov. Right, thank you. Shkayach. Kapitel Kuf Lamed Beis. Shkayach. So, this is the evolution of the Harabayas. Based on the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Mem Hey, that every mountain was considered Makam Avodah Zarah. Therefore, the Harabayas could not start off as a mountain. Amar Avinu was Masal should turn into a mountain. And David HaMelech was searching Arem Tzamakoim LaHashem Mishkanois LaAvir Yaakov. But unfortunately, Turnus Rufus understood that the soul of Klal Yisrael is not the Makom Eitzim V'Avanim, it's the Makom of Hashras HaShechina. And if he's able to revert that har back into a Makom, and he's able to be Aru Ara Yisoidba, then it will no longer be a place which is Roy for Hashras HaShechina. And we all hope, and we're all mispalel, to be Zoiche, to Eloikim Tain, B'Hamidbar Har, that the Harabayas should turn into a Har Gavaya V'Giva Nesa, and we should be Zoiche to the Binyan Beis Hamikdash and the return of Hamachzer Shchinasai L'Tzion.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.